everyone, it's Gina from Orchid at Opal.com, and I'm back today with a video that I have been asked to do for quite a long time, and that is, how do I design with the bargain bead box? What is my process? And it has taken me so long to be able to share that with you because it doesn't always just click automatically, and it's hard to film that. It's hard to know when inspiration is going to strike and to be in the position to film that happening at the same time. But since I've been using these bargain bead boxes for so long, I have realized I do have a process. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I think there are some things that I could share that are helpful to some of you. Now, if you don't know what the bargain bead box is, well, I won't hold that against you. No, I'm just kidding. It is a bead subscription. It's awesome. It's a great deal. I'll leave the link to it down below. I have a coupon code too. You get so much inside of it, including gemstone beads and all the findings and different things that coordinate each and every month. So it's a great subscription if you want a lot of bang for your buck and also a lot of things you can put together right from the subscription itself. Anyway, I have part of the February subscription here, the contents in the organza bag that they came in. And I think this goes without saying, but the first step is to just take everything out of the organza bag and dump it out. I'm using one of these bead trays, by the way, that I shared in my storage video number 7. So if you're curious about that, you can check out that video. But anyway, I'm dumping all that out onto one of the trays. And then the next step, obviously, is to take everything out of the bags. You have to see these things out of the bags to really get a feel for what you want to start to do with them. So I have a little clip of everything out of the bag from the original subscription. And then what I do is I take everything off the strands. I take everything off, I put them into the little aluminum triangle bead trays. And the reason I do that is because I like to move the trays around. I like to put things together by color, see what I like together, color or shape-wise. And also with the beads not on the strands, it's easy for me to pick up the different beads and just start laying things out on the bead mat and see how everything works together. So first I look at everything as a whole. Are there any beads that look like I would really want to put them together color-wise or shape-wise? But mainly where I start after I've taken everything off the strands and out of the bags is I pick out the focals. We always get at least one, if not 2 or 3 different main focal items in the bargain bead box. It could be a gemstone focal or a metallic focal. Whatever they are, I take those and I kind of put those in the middle of the main beads that we have to work with. And I try to design a couple of solid pieces around the focals that they sent. Depending on what it is, I take a look at the, say, gemstone. Is it a plain gemstone? Is it something I don't want to cover up because it's got some really cool features? Maybe it's faceted. I consider the shape of it. Is it a solid color or is it already really busy looking? I brainstorm, is this something I'd want to bead around maybe, or is it something I'd want to do some wire wrapping around? Those are all things that I try to think about. And usually once the main pendant or focal is identified, I'll pull that aside, maybe on a separate bead tray, and then I'll start pulling other beads and findings that I think I want to put with that focal. That process is very fluid. I may end up with something totally different than I originally set out to do, but I'm very visual and I have to lay things out to really know what direction I want to go in. It's not something I just automatically know, but I like to move things around and I let the project evolve visually. Another tip I have for you at this stage is don't feel like you have to rush into it. Don't feel like you have to get the bargain bead box in the mail and the next day you're supposed to just know what to do with it or know what you want to do with it. It doesn't always hit you right away. And another reason I like the bead tray is if I want, I can have this sitting out next to me. Maybe while I'm doing other things, maybe I could have it sitting out for a week. I can look at the colors, I can look at the different focals, and I could be walking by a week later and then something all of a sudden jumps out at me. Maybe I got a sudden stroke of inspiration I hadn't gotten before. So take your time, and most importantly, remember, this is supposed to be fun. You don't want to feel pressured. Also, another tip for you, and I'm bringing this design back, is while you are thinking over a necklace design or a possibility, also be thinking ahead to earrings. Or earrings and a bracelet, or necklace and a bracelet. If you can make a set that goes together, I find that sets sell a little bit better, at least in my experience. When you have a necklace and a pair of earrings, things like that make a nice gift when you have a coordinating set. And I'm often asked if I have a necklace and it doesn't have earrings, if I have earrings to go with something, or can I make earrings to go with this? So be thinking about making sets of jewelry, not necessarily in terms of single pieces. So if there's anything you have that would coordinate with this necklace, if you could reserve maybe an extra few beads that you didn't need to put in the necklace, or if you had extra, you could put those into an earring design and create a full set, as opposed to just one single piece. In this example, I have plenty of these extra round beads. I don't have any extra daggers unless I were to not use all of these. And I do have several extra of these teardrop shaped briolette crystals. So between those two things and also pulling in some extra copper findings that coordinate, I could easily make a pair of earrings to coordinate with the necklace. Another tip I have for you is don't think of all the components in terms of what they're called or that they can only be used in one way. Take, for example, a toggle clasp. There are so many different things you can do with a simple toggle clasp, whether you just use the one side of it or if you use both, but it doesn't have to be just a toggle clasp. We get these all the time in the bargain bead box, usually in multiples, and something like this, I could name off 10 things. In fact, I need to do a video just on what can you do with toggle clasps. But just for a couple examples, this could be a connector for a necklace. This could be an earring finding where you actually bead onto it. You could use these on either side of a bracelet. You could turn this into a pendant. So don't be afraid to think outside of the box when it comes to the findings that they send and the focals. Even turning something like this into a lariat component, I've done that before in the past. You have a nice big loop here where you could actually feed a strand of beads through. And also don't be afraid to experiment and to have to take things apart. You may think something will work out and you give it a good try and then you end up not liking it, and it's okay, you take it apart. And that's the great thing about beads, is that you can reuse them and turn them into a different creation if you're not happy. Also, don't be afraid to fill in the gaps. Don't think that you can only use things directly from that month's box. I personally like to use at least 75%, I would say, of things from that month's box for the purpose of trying to share what I've made from it. But don't be afraid to pull some things from your own stash, maybe from a previous subscription month or something you've had on hand. Maybe you already have something that would go great with the items you received. So don't forget to look around at things you may already have that you could combine with that month's box that could really help you come up with something unique and different. Once I have a couple of main pieces or main sets worked out in my mind that I think I'm going to go with, that's when I start looking at everything else that's left. And that is how I work. I start to dwindle down the contents, starting with the couple of sets or main pieces I want to make sure that I have used what I want to use in those. Then I see what's left and I take what's remaining as a whole new challenge and look at those items separately on their own and see what jumps out at me with what remains. I'll usually look at what are the largest pieces I have, what are the main focals I have left, what could be maybe the main star of the show of another piece, or do I have smaller beads that I want to turn into a bead weaving project? Are there components that excite me that I really want to use? These are all things that go through my head after I have made a couple of major pieces and I have still a ton of things left I can work with. So next, something that's jumping out at me is I could make another set, maybe a chandelier style set that uses this as a focal pendant and maybe a couple of these as earring findings. And I also really like these very tiny little apatite beads. I think they would look so delicate and beautiful on some beaded fringe. So I'm looking for some of the smallest beads that I have at this point to see what could I use in chandelier style beaded pieces where I'm looking for smaller beads that can dangle down. So these would be something I would definitely consider using in that way. I also have 3 of these pretty large stone pendant components, and I'm thinking I could take one of these and maybe do some wire wrapping around the top and turn it into its own unique wire wrapped pendant. And it would just be a single stone with some maybe wire wrapping on top and a way to connect that to a necklace. I'm also looking at all these chandelier findings if I weren't going to use these as chandelier earring components, although I have 4, I could do that. I would maybe use these on either end of a multi-strand bracelet with the strands going this way connected in between. And I'm also looking at the fact that I have 3 toggle clasps here, and these could easily be used in a multi-strand necklace. I have a lot of these dyed quartz beads, and I think the seafoam color here, and also these little rondelles. I think all of these 3 go really well together color-wise. They could make a 3-strand necklace easily. I'm thinking if I were to wire wrap one of these to use as a pendant on its own, I'm looking at what else this would coordinate with. Although this is a little bit different in terms of the shade of blue, but that's where I might combine this with more of the bluer or more aqua rounds. Maybe pull in some other things from my stash that match that blue exactly to tie it all together. So what I'm going to have to do is start to put some of those thoughts into action and see what I come up with. Things could totally change from what I just said to what I actually create. But the bottom line is I'm going to take what's here, create some other pieces from that, and then see if I have anything left to work with that I want to make into anything else. All right, it's Future Gina here. So I'm back actually on another day, and I didn't end up liking the first necklace I was putting together with that pendant and the dagger. So I actually started laying out these 2 new designs, and I'm a lot happier with them. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I also like how the individual aqua pendant goes inside that oval finding, so I might play around with that. We'll just have to see. All right, another few days have passed, and I did turn those designs that I laid out initially into finished pieces, and you can see those pictures here of how they came out, and I also shared them in the recent finished jewelry update. And having those 2 sets out of the way means that 2 of the main focals have been used from the box, and I can clean up and return my unused beads from those projects to the main board of where everything is laying out together, and I can determine what I might like to make next. I'm back on another day, and I decided I needed to definitely use those spike pendants somehow. I didn't want to use them in a simple lariat necklace because I try to bring you all different things each and every month, and I feel like I've done quite a few lariats recently. So I decided to do a knotted necklace with a toggle front and at least use 2 of those pendants hanging down. The bead cap idea came later. I felt like they really needed something. And I had already done a couple of stringing projects, and I like to incorporate some bead weaving too. So I played around with making some fun striped bead caps with some delica beads. And with those delica beads out, that inspired me to incorporate those into these fringe earrings. For the fringe earrings, I knew I wanted to use those tiny antique copper drops they sent at the bottom because I think they look great hanging off the bottom of each strand of fringe. I also wanted to use some of those smaller chandelier earring components, so I brick stitched onto those and added some delica beads and also the apatite crystals in between the delicas to add another layer of texture and sparkle, and because I really wanted to use those tiny gemstone beads in fringe. Going back to the spiked pendants with bead caps though, I started out with one just having a bead cap and one not having one, but I decided I thought it would look better if both of them had a little striped bead cap. So I did start out by making that pendant portion first, the part that is hanging off the toggle. And then I actually went back and did the whole strand and did the knotting portion of that last. Because I had a lot of the teal beads and those spike pendants are so blue, they had a lot of the aqua tone in them, I decided to look at my stash and see if I could pull out any beads that would coordinate with the teal that would really bring together the aqua and the teal together in the color palette. So I found some larger dyed jade rounds that I had had for quite some time that really coordinated well with those pendants, and that seemed to bring the whole piece together. So with 4 solid pieces, and actually a couple of them being sets made from the contents of this box, I felt really good about that, and I decided to stop there. And you can see this is a tray of everything that I still have left from the contents of the box, and that's why I'm always raving about how great a value it is, because even with those pieces, pulling minimal items from my stash, there's still a lot left over that can be worked into other pieces directly from what's left or saved for future finished pieces. So that's where I stopped this time, but you could certainly keep going. When I've challenged myself to come up with as many pieces as possible from the box, I would just keep going with the same process, continuing to narrow down the beads and findings that are left until I have pretty much exhausted everything that I could. So there you have it. That's a peek into my design process when I am creating new pieces from the bargain bead box. I know I wasn't able to catch everything on film step by step while it was happening, but hopefully this breakdown helped you to understand kind of where I start, how I come up with my designs, and how I keep going with what I have left. In addition to this, I'll also have a blog post that outlines the steps step by step, all written out in an organized way. So if you'd like to refer to that for future reference, if you ever get stuck or anything, maybe that will be helpful for you. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you follow any of these similar steps when you're creating. Maybe you do something totally different, and we'd all love to hear about it. So please feel free to share in the comments if you have any additional tips and tricks that could help others. If this video was helpful for you, please feel free to give it a big thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate that, and I'd love to have you as a subscriber, so feel free to hit that button while you're there too. A big, massive thank you to everyone that watched today. I really appreciate having you. It means a lot to me, and I will see you all again real soon. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and as always, happy beading.